Psychic development. Let's assume that you're all psychic to a certain extent. Everyone is. Some people, of course, are more conscious of it. What is the psyche? What is the difference between the psychic and the occult, or perhaps the spiritual? I'd like to set some parameters before we start. There'll be overlap, of course, there always is. But just by way of definition. The mystical, the occult sometimes it's called, is the area of the study of self-knowledge involving the entrance into alternate planes of attention. It's the study of power, essentially, mysticism. Lower mysticism is voodoo, the occult side of it, the lower occult. Higher mysticism is something like attaining enlightenment only through power. The psychic has to do with developing abilities to perceive beyond the physical. It's not so much a study of power, while there are some powers certainly that develop through it, but of perception. How to become perception itself eventually. How to become more aware of what we perceive, more aware of ourselves, of those around us, the universe, different planes of consciousness, different beings, energy, life itself. You know. The spiritual, I would relegate to the enlightenment process, more specifically. I mean, everything is spiritual, I suppose, but in particular, the spiritual would be the entrance into samadhi, becoming a saint, humble, pure, available. So the psychic then is more the study of clairvoyance, clairaudience, seeing into the future, the past, knowing what's going on in other people's bedrooms without having to be there and go through the experience yourself. I mean, just think of the possibilities. You could be in 100 places at once. The psychic is a happy study. I think a lot of people have attached a lot of strange symbolisms to it, and that really has to do with the lower occult. Okay? But the psychic is a study of joy. It's a very positive study. It's the study of the psychic network, the networking principle of consciousness and awareness. It's essentially the study of how to have more fun with your life and that which is beyond life and death. Tonight we're going to be doing some exercises. We're going to be putting on sweatpants and little leg warmers, and we have a giant pyramid that we have. It's being lowered by helicopter later. We're going to climb it. And then we're going to move it without touching it, right? So the psychic is the study of, it's sort of the Snoopy consciousness in the mystical studies plane, essentially. The heavy occult would sort of be more like Charlie Brown. The spiritual, I suppose, would be, oh God, nobody's spiritual anymore. It's hard. Grog in BC, that's about it. So the psychic, well, people waste a lot of time, it seems to me. I'm tempted to say listening to me, but hear, hear. People waste a lot of time talking. You know, it's possible, like when I look at someone, I can look inside them. And it's not necessary to talk. I can just, it's like reading a book. You can just go through the pages of a person. You know, you can see their past lives, you can see selves. You can know more about a person than they know about themselves. I would think it would be embarrassing to have somebody look at you that way if you couldn't see that yourself. So I think you should fight back. And that's what we're going to discuss tonight. And that's how you can become your own psychic, if you will, or psychic, or aware of some other possibilities, things perhaps in the pathway of life that some people skip, which I find rather exciting and illuminating and sometimes awesome, sometimes silly. Welcome to the twilight. No, welcome to the other worlds. How do you become psychic? Well, you are, but the problem is we think all the time. And as we think, our thoughts block the psyche. There are many levels of mind. Higher mind, lower mind, in-between mind, beyond mind. That's the best. But while we're in the mind, there are areas of mind that very few people tap. This is no news, I understand. But the reason is because they think all the time. In order to move into the psychic planes of attention, it's really necessary to stop thought for periods of time, or just to slow thought. Otherwise, it's like tonight, the stars are out there, but you can't see them because all the clouds are up there. But they're definitely there. So when we stop thought, when we can push thought back, then it's very easy to be psychic. To be psychic is not a great gift. I mean, you don't have to be exceptional. You just have to be a little bit aware of awareness. Let's start with an exercise if we could. This is an experiential workshop, so that simply means that you'll just be able to sit there and do it. You don't have to do much, and you can even fake if you want to fake it. But we'll be doing a number of exercises tonight, usually to music. Serious group. Good. Let's say that you would like to become psychic, meaning not simply that you can go down to Madame Lagoza, who will read the leaves. I see for you 2 Mercedes. You know, that sort of thing. But let's say that you'd like to be able to perceive the deeper truths of life or of your own being, or maybe you'd like to know when someone's lying to you. That's very useful, because people do that a lot. They do that a lot. They not only lie to you, they lie to themselves. Those are the most convincing liars, because they don't know the truth themselves. So when they say something, they really sincerely believe it themselves. And it's very hard to tell, because they don't know themselves, you see. So let's say that you'd like to know that the peanut butter is going to be good before you pick it off the shelf. How do you do that? How do you become aware of eternity, of God, of immortality? I ask a lot of questions. If you'd close your eyes, please. Now, I'd like you to relax. We're going to do some very simple meditative techniques. It's not really necessary for you to do them phenomenally well tonight. Rather, this is just a run-through so you can practice them at home. You'll find that these methods of expanding awareness are extremely powerful. And if you practice them, or even just once in a while, let alone once a day, you'll see that you will become extremely sensitive, and suddenly you will start to see inside people, inside yourself. You'll just come to know things having to do with all of life. Yet they're so simple. You can be fooled by them. They're so simple. What I'd like you to do, to start with, is to focus on what the mystics call the third eye. The third eye is an energy center. There's 7 principal energy centers, also known as chakras, that are contained not in the physical body, but in what we call the etheric or subtle physical body, which is a body of lighter energy that surrounds our physical body. What I'd like you to do is to focus your attention on what they call in Sanskrit, the Agni chakra, which is the psychic energy center of vision. It is located between the eyebrows and about a ½ inch above. If you, for a moment, you would take one of your hands and touch a finger, okay, to that spot. Everybody just take their hand up there for a second, like I am, and put a finger right there, very, very gently, okay. Now, what you're really doing is not focusing on the body, But let's say you want to focus in that area. It doesn't have to be a pinpoint, but just that general area. Very good. You can put your hand down. What I'd like you to do is to close your eyes, focus your attention on that spot, relax, and see what you see. Now, this is not hypnosis, okay? It's meditation. And what you're trying to do eventually is to stop all thought, but that takes quite a while unless you've been doing this for some time or you're just gifted. So what I'd like you to do is to focus your attention on the spot, and it might help you, this is up to you, this is the optional part, to picture light, sort of a turning light, okay, going in a clockwise direction, just going, sort of round and round, you see? Right there. Focus your attention there and relax for a minute. Now, naturally, when we do these exercises together, I go into a psychic state of consciousness, of course, and increase the energy to make it a little bit easier for you. We'll be listening to a little bit of music while we do this, just to even things out a little bit, all the different energies. And then we'll talk about the psychic network, the network of light that all people who are engaged in the psychic studies are part of, not just in this world, but in many other worlds. So if you'd close your eyes, focus on that spot, and just for about 3 or 4 minutes, I'd just like you to relax. This is just to get you to relax so we can have a good evening here. Good. We live in a dark world. It's a beautiful world, God knows. But it's a very dark place where people suppress each other, they fight each other, they destroy each other, they destroy their environment. And you could get a very negative attitude after a while if you studied history or just watched television. God, disease is rampant. I know, it's terrible, isn't it? And there's a lot of flu around and stuff, and I'm sure you'll have it by the end of the night. But if we make the psychic energy high enough, everyone will walk out cured. I don't know. But anyway, you almost went for it. So you could start to get you could get kind of a negative attitude towards life if you just, right? It's true. I don't have to, I skip every other sentence since you're psychic. So, well, this is how you work up to paragraphs. So, right? Yeah, you see, it works. Yeah, good. Well, there's a psychic energy network. This is one small planet in one small dimension in one small corner of a very large eternity. And there are many other worlds with highly developed beings that do not necessarily muck around so much with each other and try and destroy each other. They sort of doped out certain principles. I say greetings in 64 languages. Right? And they're part of what we call the psychic network. There's a networking of higher beings throughout the universe. It's a networking of goodwill, of higher energy, of hope, of light, of knowledge. And as you develop in your lifetime or through your series of lifetimes, gradually you become aware of the network. The network works for you all of the time. When you're ready at a certain stage in your evolution, the network actually makes its presence known to you. Certain events in your life will work out a certain way so that very positive things will happen to you that lead you towards self-awareness and self-knowledge. The psychic network, of course, exists not just throughout the universe, but in our own planet, naturally. While there are 4 billion, soon to be 8, soon they say 16 billion people on the planet Earth by the year 2015, some of those individuals are aware, very aware. And there's a network between those individuals, which you can join and be part of, and you don't have to pay any dues, and you don't get a card to carry. and it's the psychic network. Let's assume for a moment that you're here because there's something special about you. Okay. Now, of course, there's something special about everyone, but the thing that's special about you is your awareness. Just your interest in the psychic suggests that you're fairly evolved, that you've had a great many lifetimes from the point of view of reincarnation. Otherwise, the rain would have deterred you or something else, or someone else would have tonight. And so instead, you've come to explore awareness. This says something very good about you, sincerely. And as you continue your journey of self-discovery, you'll begin to feel the presence of the psychic network. This is 1985, and it's the beginning of a cycle of time. A very dark cycle of time, I suppose you might say. The next 30 years are going to be a very difficult period for humanity, and humanity may not even, as we all know, survive the next 30 years. A lot depends upon a few people. You know, people get a negative attitude about life. They feel that, well, what difference can you make? You know, what difference can an individual make? You see? And that's just not true at all. Individuals make all the difference in the world because you have to understand personal power, psychic power, and how it works. You see, one person can live, a Buddha, a Christ, a Krishna, and they can change a whole world. You might say, well, there's still a lot of terrible things in the world, all kinds of problems and darkness. Do you know how much worse it would have been had they not been there? You could say, well, look what people have done to what they said. They took it and corrupted it or used it to advance themselves. But still, do you know how much darker the world would be? If it was not for the psychic network, if it was not for people like yourself who have an interest in higher attention, the world would be a very, very dark place. Darker than most people can imagine. Because it's not just numbers. In the psychic realm, we deal with power. Power is measured in evolution. The average soul goes through 84,000 incarnations, approximately, give or take, whatever. And that's a lot of lifetimes. Now the thing is, most of the souls in this particular world are not that old, but some are. And those few that are, of course, are interested in the psychic and spiritual and so on, that stuff. Those individuals have had a lot more lifetimes and therefore have a lot of personal power. And when you use that power, one person who has a good intention, a good thought, who delves into the psyche, who looks inside themselves, can offset the negativity of thousands and thousands of individuals. But we'll talk about psychic development, of course, tonight. Do lots of exercises, answer your questions. But I'd just like to set a tone that is perhaps a little more positive than we hear sometimes, because we are entering into a dark time. You see, periodically there are dark ages in the world. It's not horrible, you might say it's meant to be. It's part of the cycle of life. It's a purgation. But what makes a dark age? Well, I'm sure we could trace socio-political causes, perhaps. But what causes those things to be? There are currents in the universe, energy currents, in what we call the subtle physical or astral realm. These energy currents affect all of us all the time. Most people are unaware of these currents, but that doesn't mean that they aren't affected. You may not be aware that someone is doing something good for you and helping you avoid problems if they don't make themselves known to you. But you still reap the benefit of the effect. So, in the same sense, there are currents through the universe. Everything is made up of energy, all of life. Matter itself is made up of energy. We are energy. Our awareness is energy. Our bodies are energy. All of life is energy. And there are both physical, what we would call physical and non-physical energies. Our physical body, of course, is affected by the physical energies, and our non-physical body, the subtle physical body, is affected by the subtle or non-physical energies. These energy currents are vortexes, and they sweep across the cosmos. And they follow a pattern, very much like our universe does. There's an order there, of a sort. So right now we're entering into a dark time. Actually, we've been in it for, about 10,000 years. But it's getting darker. And this is a very important time for people who are psychically developed. This year, 1985, is a turning point in the vibratory patterns of our world. And what that means is that there is a great deal of lower astral energy that is coming into the consciousness. You may have found lately, perhaps not, but that it's more difficult to perform simple tasks like thinking. No, if you're sensitive psychically, you're picking up on what's going on. You know, things that would have seemed very easy, concentration, and so on and so forth, very basic things, are a little more difficult. It's because the energy is changing. Now, most human beings, of course, have no consonance with their environment. That is to say, they don't remember what it was like yesterday. In other words, you're depressed for an hour, you may have been happy for 10 years, and now it's going to be like you've always been depressed. Your whole life has been awful. It's always been bad. You see? That's the New York City consciousness. So, but it's not true. Of course, your life was great up until, you went to New York. I mean, till that hour. So, what am I trying to say? Well, what I'm trying to say is that we should do another exercise. The second exercise has to do with perception. And what I'd like you to do is to do this exercise with the eyes closed and with the eyes open, okay? To begin with, we're going to start in a moment with the eyes closed. And what I'd like you to do is focus on the center of the chest. There are 7 principal chakras or energy centers. There's one, the crown of the head, the third eye, which we focused on a moment ago. There's one around the base of the throat. These are called nadi. There's one around the center of the chest, the solar plexus area, at the base of the spine, and halfway in between the solar plexus and the base of the spine. There are also nadis or psychic energy centers in the hands, feet, okay, different parts of the body. Again, they're not exactly in the skin, but they're in this subtle physical, etheric body. Now, what we're going to do is focus, first of all, on the central axis, which is, we call it the heart center, although it's not really associated with the physical heart. And it's right in the center of the chest. This is the psychic energy center of love, and also for developing the psychic senses. The psychic senses primarily develop through focus on 2 psychic centers, the third eye and what we call the heart center. And if you divide your time between these 2 centers as a focus during your meditation, you will find that you will very quickly develop all of the psychic sensitivities. Very quickly. The lower centers, the 3 lower centers, have more to do with the mystical, which I spoke about before, which is the study of power. And the highest center has to do with spiritual enlightenment and illumination. And the throat center really has to do with creativity, with the arts, with that sort of thing. They have other associated functions. But for our purposes, the 2 that are interesting, as far as developing the psyche and your psychic senses, the ability to see on other planes of consciousness, just to know, are the third eye and the heart center. And those are the 2 we're principally working with tonight. I'd like you to focus here, right in the center of the chest. For a moment, let's do this little finger thing again. Take one of your fingers and place it right here in the center of the chest. Just touch there for a second and close your eyes and feel that area. Now, this is an area within your being of perfect light, perfect luminosity. The psychic planes are very luminous planes of attention. They're filled with all these beautiful lights. And when you clear your mind of thought and settle down and relax a little bit and you focus on this point, you will see and experience other dimensions of light. The experiences that you have while focusing on this psychic center will be very, very different than the experiences with the third eye. The experiences that you have while focusing on the heart center will have more to do with understanding, with intuition, with feeling. You're going to resensitize your being to all sides of life so that you will be able to perceive things without having to think about them, without having to go to a place or a location, things like that. It's more of the feeling side of the psyche. The third eye, on the other hand, is the visionary side of the psyche. That is to say, seeing into other planes of attention, other worlds, transacting with other beings, moving through the astral dimensions and so on. This has to do with the third eye. Think of that as the third eye is the eye which sees all of life, particularly life outside of the physical realms and mental realms. Whereas the heart center has more to do with feeling, understanding, love, knowledge, things like that. There's a certain amount of overlap, of course. So now for a moment, let's focus on the heart center. And this time, rather than try and see, our interest is to feel, to experience. And why don't we start with something very basic, like the energy of everyone here. Okay, we have a lot of sentient beings, a lot of living beings in the room here with us. And I'm sure there's some non-physical beings that probably slipped in with a few of you. Brought some of your friends, eh? Oh well, they don't have to pay admission. So, what I'd like you to do is to close your eyes, to focus on the heart center, meaning just put a little bit of your attention there. You don't necessarily have to imagine or visualize anything, or if you'd like to, you can just imagine a glowing light there, because there is. It's a very bright light, actually. And I'd like you to just feel very, very sensitive, and then just perceive the energy shifts that are taking place in the room. There are a lot of very powerful people here tonight. Everyone here is interested in the psyche, so those are all highly advanced people. They may not look it, but they are. That is my experience, and that is what I see. So if you would focus your attention there, and let's just try feeling. It's a very simple exercise. Try not to think too much, or if you think a lot, ignore your thoughts and have nothing to do with them. Listen to the music if you like a little bit, if that will get you out of your thoughts. And just feel how you feel. I'm sitting up here, I should be bombarded by smile energy. And I'm feeling like the subtle grin. It's like somebody has a ticker there. Now, this is important. Okay, now you may think this is silly, and you're darn right, it's silly. More things should be. You're dealing with the psyche, and in order to deal with the realms of knowledge and power that you enter into the psychic fields, you have to be able to be very light, because otherwise, as you start to go through the interdimensional vortexes, you'll have real problems. You have to be very light. It's like, the psychic development is like ballet. It's like dance. You have to be completely fluid and be able to sometimes shift through hundreds of levels of attention, hundreds of dimensions, within moments. It's very quick. So you need to be very light. So part of the reason we focus on the heart center is this develops a lightness in one's being, a sense of love, of awe at the magic of life and existence. And smiling is a big part of it. Now you don't have to smile at other people. That's up to you. Okay. But it's good to smile by yourself sometimes, because it's a sign that you love yourself and that you love life. And the psyche is engaged fully in love all of the time. Now it may seem strange. You say, well, what does that have to do with being able to know what someone is thinking? The reason you don't know what someone is thinking, the reason that you don't see into other dimensions, is because you're too heavy. The balloon, you want the balloon to go up in the air. And so you fill it with helium or whatever. But if you have all these sandbags attached to it, it can't go up. Well, the sandbags are the attachments that we have inside ourselves. And there are many selves inside the self. You see, you're not just composed of one self, but there are literally dozens or hundreds of selves under the surface. And in psychic development, what we do is we learn about each of our inner selves. There are different voices inside the psyche. We're not just one individual. We're all schizophrenic. I thought that was good. But so, in order to deal with the many sides of our being, in other words, there may be someone inside you who's a real nasty, hateful, oh, I hate everybody. You next to me. And you. Oh. You know what I mean? No, there could be a self in there like that, way down underneath somewhere. You see? Then there's the self that's sitting there, you know. That's self, right? But inside there could be this other one, you know. See? And in psychic development, you have to go through yourself and confront all of your different selves. They all have lunch. They get together, it's nice. And you can put it on your IRS form and everything. It's a business lunch if you're in psychic development. You took yourselves out. Right? Why not? So, you've got to start, digging inside. Now, in order to do this, it's important to be able to smile. Okay, I know it sounds ridiculous, and it is. That's why it's good. Okay, there should be more ridiculous things in life. Right. Okay, so we're going to try this again, if you will. The first part of the exercise, I'd like you to sit there and not smile. I know, you're thinking to yourself, I can read your mind. I spent $7 for this? Yes, you did. We all make mistakes. So, see, now had you been psychic, but so, you're not supposed to smile in the first part, okay, no matter what. Then, a smallness, a little tiny grin will begin to appear. Not much. Don't go, little foreplay here, okay? Then gradually the smile will get bigger and bigger and bigger, okay? Then you can stop with the smiling, we're done with it, we let go. If we never feel love or any other emotion, it doesn't matter. We detach from it thoroughly. You have to be able to let go of all emotion for the next step. What we want to do is ride emotion as high as we can to the highest level of emotion, then we drop it. Because emotion is a stratified plane of awareness, and you want to be able to leap beyond it. There are things beyond emotion, or we could say they're psychic emotions, but they're not the ones we usually perceive in our waking states of consciousness. So what we're doing is using emotion as sort of like a ski lift. We're going to get on the ski lift of emotion, and we're going to ride it up to the top. But then there's another lift from there, which has nothing to do with emotion. So first, you need to be able to make yourself kind of happy, be silly, smile a little bit. And then we'll ride that up for a minute, then we'll stop, and then we're going to do something a little bit more intense. Okay? Good. Just relax. Try and feel the stillness of eternity. Eternity is very active, life is real busy all around us. But just beyond, in the next dimension, there's absolute perfect peace and stillness. And there are doorways to go into that stillness. And beyond that stillness, there's much more. The whole universe, endless universes. But the door is the psychic gateway. And it's right in the center of the chest, or the third eye. So focus on the center of the chest, and now try smiling a little bit, just to yourself, a happy little smile. And then we'll do something else in just a moment. Just do that for a minute or so. Energy is very subtle when you first start the study. In the beginning, sometimes it's hard to know if you're experiencing anything or if anything is changing. So it's a good idea, if you're interested in psychic development, to set up a little schedule for yourself of practice. Some of you are naturally gifted. You have a certain amount of vision. Perhaps you developed it in another lifetime. Perhaps it came by chance. Who knows? But if you'd like to develop your vision further, your sensitivity, your energy level, your awareness, your use of your total mind, it's necessary to practice. The practice is fun. It's hopeful. And it brings tremendous, tremendous personal power to you. Now, this is the issue that I'm concerned with. What are you going to do with all this power when you get it? It's been my experience as a teacher that many people who develop power don't use it very well. By power, I mean the power of the psyche. Now, I'm not a terrible moralist particularly. I think you should, have whatever you want in life, and as long as you don't infringe upon the rights of others, that's fine. But we're unleashing here a very powerful thing. The human psyche. It's endless because it's networked with all of eternity. We discuss what we call the second attention. The first attention is the waking consciousness. The second attention is a step above the waking consciousness. All of us have a series of levels of mind. Not mind in the physical sense of the brain, but of awareness. And let's say that these different levels of mind, for most people, are separated. You know the cheese with the paper between the slices? Right. Exactly. So you're psychic, you understood. So, in the same sense, mind is separated. And the question is, are those little cheeses aware of each other? If you're very psychic, you'll know. But the levels of your mind are not necessarily aware of each other. So, for example, you are right now operating on certain higher astral planes. Parts of your being are. But your lower mind, not that it's particularly low, but what we call the lower mind, the thinking mind, that one. Yeah, that mind is not necessarily aware of what the other levels of mind are doing. Psychic awareness or psychic development is not so much a development in terms of developing. We think of developing as a cause and effect process. Okay, if I'm going to develop a picture, there was nothing there, and I put it in the developer, and that sort of stuff, and I come up and there it is. If I'm going to develop muscles, I'll go down and I'll lift weights. Psychic development it's almost a misnomer because there isn't anything that we really develop. Rather, what we do is we envelop. We simply dissolve the layers, the sort of the paper between the slices, and the mind becomes unified. We make the mind aware of itself, and the aspects integrate in new ways. This is psychic development. And there are very specific, age-old practices for doing this, a few of which I'm teaching you this evening. Now, as you do this, you become very, very powerful, more so than you might realize. And the question that comes up, it's part of the study naturally, is what to do with that power. Okay. Now this may not sound like much to you right now. You're saying, well, power, what are you talking about? I come here, a couple of dumbass that watch his hands move, and nothing, I don't feel nothing. Nothing. Oh yeah? Wait till you get home. See how you feel then. I'll show you. But anyway, so the question is, if you practice these exercises and you engage in psychic development, which some of you already do, what are you going to do with the tremendous power that you unleash? Okay, and that in fact you do. Well, it's my suggestion, and that's why I brought up the psychic network earlier, that you join the psychic network. Okay, no forms to fill out, okay? If you become aware that there's a networking of energies of all people who are engaged in the higher aspect of the psychic study and beings and other levels and other dimensions, then you might say a protection comes with that, a knowledge comes with that. If you're seeking power, not just for its own sake, which is interesting, but also because you'd like to do happy things for others. Then if you join the network, any power you develop will increase hundreds of times, but in the correct way. If you don't join the network, you're on your own. You're an individual perceiver out there, a little band of molecular perception bouncing around in the cosmos. And then you're more subject to certain karmas that can come up from abusing the powers. Now again, I don't believe in commandments necessarily or anything like that, except that one does not interfere with the processes of life. That's really the only psychic commandment. Naturally, to understand that commandment, you have to understand the processes of life, which is what the psychic study is for, to delve into that, to plumb the depths of the universe. How do you develop psychic power? To begin with, it's necessary, I would say, at least once a day or every other day, to sit down for a period of time and practice. And if you would practice focusing either on the third eye or the heart center for perhaps 5 minutes, 15 minutes, a half an hour, whatever you're comfortable with, you will find that within a month's time, your entire awareness field will change. And as 1 month leads to another, your psychic development will unfold. During an individual session, when you're sitting to practice, okay, it's good to sit up straight normally. You can practice lying down, but it will not be as powerful because the Kundalini doesn't flow quite as well as when the spine is very straight. You can lean, you can be in a chair or sit on the floor, whatever you like. During an individual session, you can, if you will, switch. You could focus for a while in the heart center, focus for a while in the third eye, whatever you will. Stay with one center. Or what I suggest is, begin with one center. Let's say you were going to sit down and it's late afternoon, you came back from work or something, and you're sitting down, and focus on your third eye, let's say, to start, or the heart, either one, and stay with it for about 5 minutes. For about 5 minutes, focus, and after a while, you'll begin to feel a lightness, as if you're floating. That's one of the first sensations that you're going outside of the body awareness. You may see dazzling displays of color. You may see nothing and feel nothing at all, initially. That doesn't mean that something isn't happening. All week long you work. You don't necessarily get money every day. Suddenly a check comes in. But it was accruing. So during an individual session, you should not necessarily expect to feel too much, but about 10 or 15 minutes after the session is complete, you will notice that you will go through a tremendous awareness change. And the more intensity you put into the session, the greater that change will be. So normally it's good to sit down and, let's say for the first 5 minutes, focus. Then after that, you don't have to focus if you don't want to. You can just let go and try and relax and just let the feelings flood through you as you move into the psyche. If you find you become a little earthbound, in other words, if you start to think a lot, if suddenly you're not feeling too much, you sat down for 5 minutes, you were very focused, everything felt wonderful for 15 minutes, then just you're getting caught up in the Maya again. At that point, if you go back to the focus for a few minutes, it'll clear you again. What kind of experiences can you expect? Well, in the beginning, as I said, the experiences will be a little bit subtle. To start out with initially, you'll just feel better. You'll have more energy, because that's what you're tapping into is cosmic energy. You'll have a more positive attitude. But then, something else will begin to happen. You'll begin to see inside people. Now, it's very important to respect the privacy of others. True, it's wonderful to develop these psychic gifts, and it's great to be able to look inside the person next to you. But there's a code, an unwritten code, that is part of the psychic network. And that is never to interfere with the privacy of another's thoughts, unless they wish you to. And you will be sensitive enough, as you clear the psyche, to know that. Now, of course, there's unintentional seeing. It happens all the time. As you become more and more psychic, you're just going to look at people. You walk into a room and you can look at 50 people and understand each one completely in an instant. Because we step out of time in the psyche, you see. We move into a timeless dimension where we can accomplish many, many things simultaneously. 1,000 things can happen outside of time in what we would say is a second. It's like a fantastic computer, the psyche. It processes tremendous bits of information all at once. What's the purpose? What's the purpose of all this? Fun, a cheap date. Does he or doesn't he? You'll know for sure. What's the purpose of this? Well, if I can get historical just for about 5 seconds. They used to burn witches. You know who the witches were? Most of them? They were ordinary people who weren't ordinary. In other words, they were individuals who were highly evolved, who had psychic gifts. Now, of course, I'm dealing with an accepted knowledge of reincarnation. But even if you don't believe in reincarnation and you only believe in the psychic abilities, it'll work out the same way. Throughout history, people with psychic gifts have been persecuted, burned at the stake, French fried, mashed. You know, they've done some pretty horrible things. And as a matter of fact, the psychic network has sent a number of emissaries from other worlds to this world. And I'm not talking flying saucers, okay? You're going to say, hey, it's flying saucers, he's nuts. I'm talking flying spoons. You always knew, didn't you? Oh yes, Rama, I always knew it was spoons. I always knew. No. Through the process of incarnation, we all are involved in this great cosmological process. Our souls are eternal with thousands of lifetimes. And the soul in its evolution goes through different worlds and different incarnations. The psychic network sometimes sends advanced souls to worlds that are not that advanced, to bring light, to bring knowledge. And of course, the reaction of this particular world has not always been too thrilling to the emissaries. That's why that movie is so fascinating, Starman, because even in popular fiction, they very well catch the idea of what would happen, of course, if, in this case, it's an alien from another planet, sort of comes down basically and to the earth, and what would happen to somebody with all these psychic abilities. Well, it doesn't have to be science fiction. I mean, higher beings have evolved and come into this world, been born into this world many times, and they usually have a terrible time. Many of them have been terribly killed. One can't kill. The soul is eternal, but it can certainly, interfere with your style a little bit. Now, why does this happen? I mean, why does humanity, every time the net sends somebody down, that being, unless they're extremely inaccessible, is destroyed? Why is this? What is this thing in human consciousness? I mean, even if it's not a fully enlightened being, if it's just someone with a lot of light, a Martin Luther King, a John Kennedy, a Gandhi, why do we have to kill them always? It's easy to understand. Within the psyche, there is a battle. Now, I'm not speaking psychic, but psyche. If you look at the broad range of evolution, you'll see that they're polarizing forces. Sometimes we call them yin and yang, dark and light, whatever you want. Make up words, fwaz and znoid. All right. They're polarizing forces in existence. And there's an interplay between them. Now, certain forces or energies resist light. That's their nature. Someone is in a dark room They can't see. We shut out all the lights. They hear another voice in the dark room that they can't see. And that voice says that if the lights come on, everything will be awful. It'll be horrible. Everyone will be blinded. Everything that you've done wrong will be exposed. Terrible things will happen to you. One believes the voice because there's no other voice in the world of darkness. So in human consciousness, when people feel or are in the presence of intense light, highly evolved beings, they freak out. They either run to them to worship and adore them, which is ridiculous, as opposed to just sit and have a good time with them, or they run away, or they seek to destroy them. Because if you allow that being of light to live, that means that you have to accept that they are that, because obviously you recognize them, that's why you want to destroy them, some force within the self, and that means that that individual will have to go through a change and some self-examination. In other words, it's easier to shoot the person who's telling you the truth sometimes than deal with it. That's the mentality very often in this particular world. Now that hasn't stopped the network from sending higher beings in, because those higher beings have done a tremendous amount of good. And they make you aware of your own infinite possibilities. It's just someone who's progressed a little further than you, who says, there's so much you can do with life. There's so many incredible possibilities. Life is endless. What human beings experience down here, did you ever have to go to detention hall in high school? Yeah? Yeah? Oh, come on. You did, yeah. That's what the earth is like. The earth is like the detention hall of the universe. Not jail, detention hall, different. Okay? It's where you have to spend the extra hour. This is the planet you have to keep coming back to until you get it right. I know. It's a nice planet, though. Another exercise. I'd like you to close your eyes and imagine that a small frog is sitting in your nose. No! Strange thoughts you have. Okay, I'm going to teach you how to read somebody's mind, but you have to promise, See, you got it, right? See, you're learning. It's really much easier because you can just save a lot of phone bills and things. And no, it's nice. You just know. You know. Okay. How can you become clairvoyant? Okay. This is very, very simple. What I would like you to do is to, in a moment, to clear your mind. And I would like you to imagine a glass sphere, okay, a big ball of glass, or a glass-like substance, and it's in the air. Now, you don't have to get a mental picture of this. This doesn't have to be 3D, okay? But I just would like to introduce the concept to you of a sphere, okay, kind of like a basketball, only clearer. Yet not so clear that you can't tell that it's a sphere in the air. That's why it's like glass. You can just see a little something. Now, inside this glass, there's everything inside the sphere, everything. All knowledge. Okay, again, you don't have to imagine this. But it is there, it's in the universe. There's a place like this. And we're going to tap into it. Now, let's say that you would like to know something. That knowledge already exists. Anything that you could possibly want to know already exists in this sphere. This sphere is surcharged with light and energy. And all you have to do is meld with it. Okay, it's sort of, we're going to do a little Spock stuff here, okay? What I'd like you to do is to become aware that this sphere exists in another world, in another dimension. And simply thinking of it will put you in touch with it. Now, when you want to find something out, when you want to develop your clairvoyant senses, during the exercise, you don't think about what you want to know. Because if you think about what you want to know, you won't find out what you want to know because you'll be too busy thinking about what you want to know. So that's why we introduce a medium in between ourselves and that which we want to know. It's a kind of a distraction, but it also leads us someplace in this case. So what I'd like you to do is to imagine this sphere of light. It can be any size you want. It can be thousands of meters across. It can be a few feet, a few inches. Size is not important. And you don't have to ask yourself a question. You can practice that at home, or you can if you want to. But let's say you would like to know something. Okay. Meaning you would like to know what someone thinks about you really. Okay? You would like to know, would it really be beneficial to purchase this particular car? Would it really be beneficial to ask this person to marry you? Would it really be beneficial to, or it could have to do with other things. You might like to see into a particular plane of attention. You might like to understand something that happened to you in your past so you can overcome some of your conditioning. Whatever it is, you would think of it first. Then forget about it. Don't ponder it over and over, because that will interfere with the seeing process. In seeing, we must become absolutely precise and clear. And then simply imagine, again, you don't have to see a picture, the sphere I have described. It's like a glass sphere, a sphere of light. It's filled with light. The light changes constantly within it. You don't have to picture it, but just know that it's there. And then I want you to meld your mind with that sphere. Simply feel that your mind and that sphere are coming closer and closer together, and that your mind is entering the sphere, or vice versa, until your mind actually becomes that sphere. And then just dwell in that place for a couple of minutes. And after that, you will know whatever it was you sought to know with clarity. Your mind may doubt it. Now again, you may get this information and afterwards you'll say, well, that couldn't be, or that's not. Those are your doubts. And you can listen to them if you choose. Naturally, you should experiment a little bit with this before basing any great decisions upon it, only because it takes a while to learn how to clear yourself properly. Once you clear yourself properly, it's very easy to do, to know whatever you need to know in life. Naturally, if you have conflicting desires, okay, you want to buy the new Ferrari. You know you can't afford it. You meditate on the sphere. Should I buy the Ferrari? The obvious answer is, no way, Harry. Okay. And you know that and you get mad and you say, well, that can't be the right answer because it's conflicting with your desire. You say, well, what did you expect? Why ask? You already know what you want to hear. But if you reach the point where you are open to other possibilities, like the truth, then this works. It's dandy. That's a good word. Okay, let's try it. But this time let's not think of anything that you want to know. Let's just practice focusing on the sphere. Close your eyes, please. Just think of the sphere. Imagine a huge field of light, an ocean of light, an eternity of light. And there's a sphere in it, which has compacted light in it, which shifts constantly. It's clear, yet it is luminous. And what you want to do is feel gradually. There's no special technique for doing it except wanting it. You must feel gradually that your mind is melding with the sphere, and the sphere with your mind, until there's no difference. And then just abide in that state for just a couple of minutes. When thoughts come in and out of your mind, ignore them. Feel that these are the thoughts of your surface mind. They have nothing to do with the sphere. The sphere will not give you thoughts as such. It'll rather just be feelings. Don't try and understand them, just let them enter you and you enter it, until a kind of completion takes place. And then you will disengage automatically at the right time, just after a couple of minutes. We'll play a little music while we do this. Yes? Good. Visualize a sphere. Just think of it. You don't have to see it. It's there in another dimension. Good. I'd like to answer a few questions and get into some areas that you might be interested in. The psychic is such a vast area to explore. There's so many things, so many avenues to pursue, and I'm sure you have particular interests. So what I'd like you to do is, if you have a question, to raise your hand, and I'll do the best I can to answer perhaps not only the question you're asking, but another one that I might see that another part of you is asking, which is, of course, how one does it in the psychic world, yes?
What if you meet somebody and you're being psychic or aware and they have bad energy? How can you protect yourself?
Well, obviously the first protection, if you meet somebody and you're psychic and they have what we would call bad energy, they are in fact low vibe, as we say in the trade, which is not a judgment but an observation. What can you do to protect yourself? Well, the first thing obviously is being able to see it. If you don't see it, then you won't know it, but they will still affect you. So your seeing is very, very important. It's very unfortunate when you can't see it, because if you can't see it naturally, you know, it's like you sit down next to someone and they have some disease and you can't see it, but it communicates to you and then you get sick. See, if you knew, you could have avoided the situation. So the real way to avoid the situation is not simply to see it when you see them physically, but to see it when you got up that day and avoid the encounter. That's the very best, if it's going to be a serious problem. So, for example, you're about to get on the 405 freeway, but if you're psychic, you can see that there's going to be a problem down on the freeway, so you take another route. Okay. That's one possibility. But there are times when that can't happen, or something else is supposed to happen. So, for example, I saw that it was going to rain tonight, months ago, when we booked this workshop. Okay, and I've told many of the people I work with that don't be disappointed if it rains, and so on and so forth, because it's inevitable. Now, one could say, well, great, Rama. Big deal. So you could see it was going to rain. Didn't do you any good, did it? And I would say, right. Except that I also saw that the night to have the first in the series of 3 workshops was on the 7th of January in 1985. And that was much more important than the rain, which would, offset or make more difficult attendance for some people. Because I could see that on the 7th, the energies would be in a certain state to provide the kind of workshop that we were supposed to do. Or you could say that I just saw that that's when it was going to happen, because that was the future. So it really didn't matter a damn what I wanted, because that was destiny. Or you could say that there are multiple destinies, and you can pick and choose different ones. But picking the right destiny does not always mean picking the most pleasant, but picking the one that's the most truthful. And on and on and on. So it just depends on what level of perception you're looking at. So coming back to your question, what can you do when you run into somebody who has bad energy? The best thing to do is to go quickly in the other direction. If you can't do that, if you need to be near them, try and put physical distance between yourself and that individual. Okay, it's like a radio transmitter. If you're close to the transmitter, it's more intense. Okay, 50 miles away, you may not even hear the station. 25, it'll be very loud. So the human aura has a radiation factor. There's an energy factor. And distance makes a terrific difference, particularly within about a 4-foot or 3-foot radius, a person's aura is the strongest. You'll notice sometimes when you run into somebody who wants to give you a hard time, they walk right up to you and they put their face in yours, They're just going to let all that hate and anger or whatever it is they're doing just zoom into your psyche. So if you just step back a foot or two, it makes a tremendous difference. Also, by creating a little bit of physical distance, you're creating also a psychic cut between yourself and that individual. The people who affect you the most are the ones you love. This is the rule of the psychic study. The people you have to be most careful of are not strangers. They affect you the least. In order for a person to have a very powerful effect upon you psychically, you have to be emotionally open to that individual. So someone you trust, someone you're concerned with, someone you love, these are the individuals who can affect you the most. That's why in families there's so many problematic situations from the psychic point of view, or in love relationships or things like that. Because we open ourselves up to a person because there's one side of them that we love, but then there may be another side or a subconscious self or another self that's antagonistic or has problems or whatever. So we take in both energies. So if it's a stranger, it's not too much of a problem. You just have to feel relatively detached, and it'll bounce off. You'll survive. You go home, meditate, take a shower. You'll feel better. Water is very important. Water neutralizes psychic energy. Okay, if you have a bad encounter, if you went to a power place and let's say that things didn't go well there, you went out to the desert or something, or you just dealt with a lot, if you're in a job where you deal with the public a lot, if you're a physician, okay, or you deal with people physically, if you touch them a lot, you're in proximity, it's a good idea to take a lot of showers because it neutralizes negative psychic energy. Living by water is always a very good idea, if possible. Things like that, but water is also a reflector of psychic energy too, which is why many power places are near water. So I would only be concerned about, avoid the situation if you can. If you can't avoid the situation, just go with it and just try and be polite, Read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. He gives lots of useful strategies for dealing with difficult people and situations. And that'll probably take care of it. If it's someone you are close to emotionally and they're not in a good phase, then the situation is a little bit more complex, and what's necessary is to become very detached. Which doesn't mean that you don't love someone, it just means that at this time their behavior is not acceptable to you. Their inner behavior. So what you do is you just shut off a little switch for a while and you put a little wall up which says, I'm on the other side of this wall, I love you very much, but it's not going to help me or help you to allow you to hurt me. As a matter of fact, you'll just engender a lot of bad karma for yourself. So I'm just going to withdraw for a while and hang out. And then when you're in a better mood, we'll try again. And if you're not, we won't. You see, I love you, but I don't think that what you're doing is right. You see, it's not with light, or it just doesn't agree with me. So the first thing is, if you're psychic enough, try and avoid the situation. If you're not, but you can see it, you're still in pretty good shape because you know what's going on. And put some distance between yourself, even on a physical level, between yourself and the individual. Try not to get emotionally involved. As soon as you open your emotions, then you're a target. You're easy to take out completely. No problem psychically. Naturally, some people are more powerful than others, and they have a greater effect. Some people have more personal power, and they can use it for good or ill. So you have to try and assess that. Also, it's a very good idea when you first meet people to really scan them very thoroughly, so you won't be surprised later. That doesn't mean that someone won't be your friend. It just means that you see that your friend has various sides. Like all of us, they have their strong points and their weak points. And that way you don't get surprised if the bill shows up in the mail and it's larger than you thought. See, all human relationships are basically contractual battles of power. Supremacy, everyone's trying to beat everybody else, to be more powerful, to be in charge of the relationship. There's this constant tug of war on an occult level between people. There's another way to go about it. You can network psychically on a higher level. But most people, of course, don't tend to do that. So if that's what you do, but you're dealing in a world of people who don't do that, it's a very good idea to present an image of yourself that is fairly strong. See, if people pick up on the fact that you're psychic, you see a lot of psychic people tend to be kind of too nice. And therefore they get pushed around because they think that that's part of being psychic or being spiritual. It has nothing to do with it whatsoever. One can be nice but not be gullible or allow oneself to be injured by others. So it's necessary then to assume to a certain degree a stance of power. Now, this may or may not suit you, but this is what I recommend to my students. And this has a lot to do with the way you dress, the way you speak. In other words, you have to paint a picture for the world, for a world of people who are not necessarily psychically attuned, that is acceptable in their genre of categories of images from the collective unconscious. And if you do that, they won't give you a hard time. In other words, if somebody sees you're a pushover, they're going to push. As again, there's that propensity in human nature, we see it again and again in the world, to destroy the innocent. Remember, it's not this way in all planes and all worlds. This world is not a good representative sample of existence. So be hopeful. That's important to realize. Like I said, it's the tension hall. You know, so what do you expect? Now you're in here for some reason. My friend here said that she sometimes sees the future. Maybe when someone is going to die or something like that. Just death? Oh, well. And work on the stock market. You can do wonders at Las Vegas, you know, if you... But anyway, so... What's happening is you have evolution from another lifetime and it's coming back. And you probably didn't do a lot in this life to develop it, right? It's just sort of happening? Right, okay. That's really exciting because that means that there's a lot more to come. But it's a very good idea not to talk to too many people about it because they'll probably burn you. People don't tend to understand. They never have, okay? You're just a little ahead of everyone else, and that can be a problem. So it's a good idea to confine your remarks to individuals who understand, okay? I know some good psychiatrists. No, just teasing. So it's a good idea to confine your remarks to people who understand. The question here, though, is it's like you're coming into an inheritance, okay? You didn't earn the money, or maybe you did in another life, who knows. But in this case, you're inheriting, it's coming in, it's a surprise. You can run through it real fast and have nothing but trendy clothes left to show for it, right? Or you can use it for other purposes, put some of it back into the network, help others, get things for yourself, make more. There are different possibilities. You have a gift, but you need to develop the gift. Also, sometimes, this may not be your experience, but for a lot of people it's frightening. It's really a strange thing because you begin, not only are you having these visions, but there's a sense that you're changing and you don't understand how or why, and you realize that there's gradually a distance between yourself and other people. In other words, you can see things other people don't. And after a while it just becomes a common everyday occurrence, but you can feel alienated. That you're sort of out there on your own by yourself, you see. So that's why it's very important to network with people who are like yourself. You don't want to exclude other people. You know, your friends are your friends, but it's a good idea to make some new friends, to meet some individuals who are perhaps like yourself, or maybe even a little further along. And then the other possibility, of course, is pursuing the study. And if you pursue the study, you can develop your gift. You see, what's happening to you is happening by itself. But let's say that the psychic stuff that's coming back to you, your ability to see the future, to perceive things, to deal, maybe that's only a portion of it, and that part is coming back easily, but the rest may not come back unless you develop it consciously. So you're a natural to a certain extent. But some people are very upset by that. Or let's say that there's a time in your life, maybe some of you have experienced this, there's a time in your life when you were very psychic, when these visions come, and then if you don't do anything with it, after a while it stops. Now some people are happy about that. They were very disturbed by it. They're leading a typical, bourgeois middle-class existence. And suddenly they start to have prophetic visions and see, it doesn't fit into the framework. There's no place in the Cuisinart for it. So for such a person, it really freaks them out, and they just want Mork and Mindy forever. So so they're happy when it goes away. But other people aren't necessarily so happy when these abilities go away. So when they're happening is the time to develop them and to channel them properly. And that's why I make you aware of the psychic network. There's a psychic network, and you can tap into it at any time. 24 hours a day, it's there. It's a network of light and energy of people who are like yourself on this planet or further along and in other worlds, who are very, very advanced, who can aid you in your journey. Someday you may meet a teacher, a physical teacher to work with, or you may just tap into the psychic network. Whatever's supposed to happen will happen. But you shouldn't feel alienated and alone. This is a normal part of the growth cycle of a being. And everyone, at one point or another, will go through this experience, and you have many ahead of you that are actually much more wonderful. You're just beginning your journey. You're hearing high-pitched tones.
Yeah.
Okay. What that means is one of two things. You're either going deaf, or, in your case, what's happening is you're changing planes of consciousness. And when you change planes of consciousness, there's a tone. Okay, it's almost a sound that you hear, very high-pitched. Yeah, that's it. You're changing planes of awareness. You're shifting from one awareness level into another. And during the moment of shifting, you hear that sound.
It happens mostly like in the morning or late at night.
Mm-hmm. That's in the morning or late at night. There's more psychic energy. You see, from 9 to 5 is the psychic net is sort of down a little bit. Because everybody's out there and they're all... But late at night particularly, from about midnight till 5, the psychic net swings. That's when it really, it cooks from there, yeah. So you'll find normally your experiences will be in that range. One of the biggest mistakes that we see people make in the psychic field, or in self-discovery in general, be it mysticism, psychic development, or spiritual development, we see it in the enlightenment process too, is what we call an over-focus on the second attention. By that I mean you spend so much time spacing out that you lose touch with life. And it's very, very important not to do that. You have to correlate your development in other spheres of attention with making your mind stronger and stronger, making your life more together, cleaning out your closets, getting your tax forms filed on time, keeping your checkbook balanced, keeping your life in order. Everything in your life, the further out you go, the tighter your life has to be. And when you do that, you avoid a lot of problems. But sometimes you see people, you give a psychic workshop and you see a few people who walk in and they're kind of like looking at the walls. Yeah. These are probably very nice people. Maybe they're architects. Oh well. These are probably very nice people. But what happened was they've just gone out there a little too far. Space brothers. They're just out there a little too far. And they see and perceive a lot of different things, you see. But their problem is that they can't quite relate it all to the world that we live in. In the psychic, we don't want to get stuck in one world or the other. The point is to be able to slide between worlds, because there are thousands and thousands of worlds. So you want to be fluid and not get hung up in any one level of attention. That's what I was talking about before. It's like a graceful ballet in the more advanced stages of the study, where you can snap and roll through thousands of levels of attention. They're endless, and not get hung up in any one place. Right? Right.
Like to call in an etheric doctor to help a friend.
An exercise to call in an etheric doctor to help a friend. Listen, the doctors I've seen lately, you wouldn't want to know. No. Psychic healing is a whole nother subject. And it's my feeling that the person who needs healing should do the invoking themselves. In other words, if someone is ill, we all get sick from time to time, and one day we die. If that individual feels the need to bring in what we would call help from another plane of attention, they will feel that themselves and they will go after it themselves. For us to interfere with their destiny, unless it's a very young child, is not necessarily a good idea. Because what you may do is channel a force that will aid that person, but perhaps they needed to go through that disease. That was an experience on their karma card, you see? So it's a good idea not to interfere. Let them do it themselves. That's really the best, in my opinion. It's hard when you love somebody. It's hard. Yes?
More details on contacting the psychic network.
Box 404. Well, it's really not so hard to do. Just click your heels 3 times. How do you do it? All you have to do is meditate, focus, think about the network. It's there. It's something that you'll discover. But there is no formal process that you have to go through. In other words, if you practice one of these exercises, okay, that we showed you, for tapping in tonight we've done 3 primary exercises, and we focused on the third eye, the heart chakra, the 2 primary psychic centers, and of course then we did the exercise with the sphere for clearing oneself. After doing any of those exercises, if you will just feel the network of energy, the psychic network, just open yourself to it. That's a start. During the day you can think of the network, think of that energy, think of those higher beings. Now, the law of supply and demand with the network. If you join the network, okay, there's one thing you're supposed to do, and that's give more than you take. So the way the network works is very simple. All day long, you're going into different stages of awareness. You're thinking different types of thoughts, happy thoughts, sad thoughts, you're frustrated, you're in love, whatever it may be. Once you patch into the network, whatever you think and feel goes into the network and affects everyone on the network. So the law of the network is, the rule of thumb, is always put in more than you take out. When you patch into the network, you will feel light, energy, consciousness coming to you. You don't have to understand from where it comes. It's a gift. There may be some beings who are aware of you, whom you are not aware of, who are aiding you. You don't need to be aware of them. If you need to be aware of them, they'll make themselves known. Sometimes it's better not to know. It just comes and that's enough and it'll get you through. But your part in the network is simply when you could get depressed and feel crummy not to, and say no, because I'm patched into the network and I want to put in something positive. And instead of just letting yourself go down, think something positive. Be creative. Be excited about your life. So the rule of the network is to put in more energy than you take out. That's what makes the network strong, is that when we could just give up for ourselves or be frustrated or say what the hell, we don't. Because we're affecting somebody else. And in this way, the network brings out higher love inside you. And as that higher love evolves, you'll find yourself patching into the network more and more and more. You will find then, as you begin to consciously think of the network and feel it, it's a psychic thing, you'll feel it, that you will begin to meet people who are involved with the network in one way or another. You'll just start to run into them. You'll be drawn to them. It'll happen. Let's say the network arranges everything. It's all taken care of. But the beauty of the system is that you don't have to go to anyone to do it. It's all done wherever you are at any time. It's always there. The networking of higher energies throughout the entire universe is always present. And there's news on the net. If you're into the tech of the net, there's a lot going on. I mean, there are all kinds of transactions taking place on the net. Messages, information. It's not just waves of good energy. I mean, there's billions and zillions of pieces of information being processed. And as you become more sensitive through your psychic development, through your meditation, through, eating at the right restaurants and stuff, gradually you will find that you will become more cognizant of what's passing on the net. But just always try and put in more than you take out. And that makes the net stronger for everybody.
Does the network naturally advance your karma, your soul?
Yes, absolutely. Sure, the network advances your karma and your soul. Yeah, any higher actions, any higher thoughts that you have create good karma. Thought is karma. It engenders states of awareness, which engenders action, which engenders reaction, which of course is karma. So, of course. See, what you're doing is, look, on your own you're out there an individual perceiver. It's tough out there. You know what I mean? Life is like a big Brillo pad some days. The return of household products. And so, you know, what's a mother to do, right? It's tough. Yeah. So when you plug into the network, of course, you're joining something that actually is a flow with yourself. It's a higher aspect of life. Just most people on this planet are not too aware of it. But in other spheres, you know, there are universes where everybody meditates, where there's no war, there's none of this nonsense at all. And for them, it's every day. I mean, the network is life. Psychically attuned people, meaning people with higher evolution and higher development, are having a tough time because we're entering a very dark cycle. And it's been getting drastically worse for the last 6 months, honestly. And it's a wonderful time to help people and to aspire. It's not, I don't mean to couch it in negative terms. It's not bad, it's just a thing that's happening in life. It's a stage of life. But it's something that has to be dealt with. And people who are not well grounded are going to have a terrible time. In other words, people who are innately psychic and spiritually developed, you know, like my friend over here, maybe they have a gift, they don't understand it. It's going to be very, very confusing. They're so sensitive, and as these energies are shifting and polarizing in the coming times, particularly in the next 30 years, there's a cycle from around 1985 to around 2015. It's going to be very difficult for these people if they don't have a solid practice, meditation every day, whatever it is, people who they share those experiences with, unless they're just very strong perceivers. Because what was easy before and apparent and clear has become very confused. It's not the individual's fault, it's the time. It's something that's just happening right now in our world. That's why more prophecies have been made about the next 30 years than any other period in history. They've been making them for thousands of years about this little 30 or 40 year time period. Because those prophets obviously were psychic, and they could see a tremendous energy shift taking place. And so they would then try and interpret that energy shift. Well, they see global this or that or the other thing. But what they were feeling was an energy shift, which is now taking place. We're in it now. It's begun. And it's an exciting time. It's as easy to attain enlightenment now as it ever was. But if you're not very well grounded, it's confusing. So the first step, I'm giving you a practical suggestion here, I'm just going my usual long way around. The first step is to realize that what's happening is not your fault. In other words, if you're sitting there blaming yourself because you are not used to these states of confusion and suddenly they're occurring, okay, the normal thing to do is just to get down on yourself and get very heavy with yourself and say, oh, it's me, I'm bad, I'm wrong. You'll just begin to have more negative thoughts and negative impressions. They're just more available at the moment. So you need to discriminate. You need to separate yourself and say, no, this isn't me, this is the condition. That in itself will begin to clear things for you. Okay? If you don't understand who's shooting at you, you're in big trouble. Okay? When you understand, you can kind of duck and get out of the way and then eventually, leave the scene. So what's happening is a lot of people are very confused right now. You're going to be seeing it more and more in the coming times. And not just psychic people, I mean, it applies to everyone, but for them it's the most painful because they're aware and they're losing their awareness. It's a very strange thing that's happening. But if you plug yourself more into your practice, basic disciplines, meditation, working on your daily life, plugging into the network, things like that, you'll find it'll really offset it, and what could be a difficult time could be a very exciting and wonderful time. Most of self-discovery is extremely private, in my opinion, and you don't have to start a fellowship or do this or that. Maybe it's just information that's applicable. We're only here for a little while on this earth. You're just here for a few more years. And what's between now and then is personal. It's your experience. And for each person it's different. Maybe for one person it's just to be still and to see more of eternity. Maybe it's to love their family more. Maybe for someone else it's to go on a spiritual quest. Maybe for someone it's to make a lot of money, to have experiences. It's different for everybody. There's no singular answer. Self-discovery is highly personal. So as you become more aware, that awareness will show you always what is the right thing to do, if you trust it. If you don't trust it, of course, then you don't use it. Oh yeah, there's a definite battle between the light and the dark. Yes. The network always wins, though. We run the galaxy. We don't believe that. Well, let's see. Which side are you on? But anyway, I don't want to get into politics. So, but I'd like to do another exercise, if I may. I'd like you to focus this time on the very top of the head, this area right here. This is the crown center, and this is the center of spiritual energy. This provides a very different type of experience than focusing. The others are gateways. They're journeying places. This does not so much take you someplace or make you feel something as cause you to become something. You might say it gives the knowledge of the soul, knowledge of light, whatever you prefer. But we move into the spiritual realm. As we explore the psychic realm, it leads us inevitably to the spiritual realm, because all realms are connected. It also leads us to the mystical realm, because all are parts of eternity. And as we go into one part, we see all other parts, all of life is a web, it's connected. So the spiritual exploration of life is something that some people, of course, who are involved in the psychic study move on to. It's sort of the graduate school, and that's the enlightenment process. So just to get a sampling of that, what I'd like to do is to have you focus your attention, you're focusing kind of just above the head, okay? That area. There's a band of energy there. You might say it's another gateway of a certain type of force or energy. Now, these gateways are just things that you walk through. They're in the astral body. But we don't stay with them. We move on to something else, into other dimensional planes or beyond dimensions to nirvana. So I'd like you to focus there, and I'd like you to actually this time to visualize something a little bit with your eyes closed. And that's, I'd like you to feel that there's gold, but not a dull gold, but a very bright light, shimmery gold light all around the top of your head. And what it's doing, it's like a rain. It's coming down through the top of your head and soaking through your whole body. And this is the Kundalini. And we're going to bring the Kundalini down instead of up. And as you do this, you'll feel it saturating through your whole body, and it'll just make your body feel really wonderful. And it cleanses the psyche and the spirit. And it works very effectively. Particularly, of course, as all these exercises do with repeated practice. So if you close your eyes, focus your attention on the top of the head, just for a couple minutes, relax a little bit. We've had a lot of exciting, interesting discussion here. And now let's take all that energy and use it to go a step further into the beyond. And so if you'd focus right at the top of the head, and just visualize a kind of rain of golden light, shimmery light. It's the light of eternity, the light of God or immortality, just passing through you. We are that light. It's our essence, it's our substance. It's beyond words and definition. It is. Before we end our evening, I'd like to give you some thoughts on things you can do to increase your psychic awareness, other than practices like the ones we've engaged in. There are many, many things you can do. Some simple ones, of course, include nature. It's a very good idea to spend some time in nature, or let's say not around other people, to clear your energy field. A lot of time is not necessary, but some time. Just even an occasional day where you go for a hike in the desert or by the beach or some place where when it's not crowded, allows you to feel your own psyche. You see, one of the things that you have to do is figure out which are your thoughts and which are the thoughts of others that other people are thinking that you're just picking up, because as psychically attuned people, you pick up a tremendous amount of thought from others. And most people grow up psychic and they don't realize that they're psychic. And they think or assume that the thoughts in their minds are their own thoughts. Because no one ever walks up to you and says, "Hi, I don't know if you realize this, but you're just a little more sensitive than most people. And you should be aware of that." And also, of course, the society, the world, whatever, we want to conform so badly. A part of us wants to be like everybody else. Not recognizing, of course, that we should just be ourselves, whatever that is. That's the best. That's our own natural evolutionary pattern. So, spending some time alone is very good. Trying to spend time with other people, of course, with high psychic energy. Practicing compassion for others, which doesn't mean doing something for everybody or thinking that we're a savior or that, the world smiles on us to help everybody, but rather just sending out, in other words, an understanding, non-judgmental energy to others can make a terrific difference. Not only for others, but for your own level of attention. A certain amount of time each day to just reflect. It might just be lying down before you go to bed. It might be practicing an exercise. It might be taking a walk. But reserving a time each day to cleanse your psyche and to renew it. You may engage in, of course, the practice of meditation or something like that, which of course leads to higher development. Or you may just be innately psychic a little bit and just find quiet moments. It depends on what you want, how far you want to go with it. But the thing that you need to watch most carefully are your interactions with others, because people who are psychic, as I suggested, tend to pick up more energy and impressions from others than they realize. And those who affect you the most are the ones you are emotionally close to, and you need not be physically close to people you are emotionally close to. In other words, someone you love or someone you just are open to. Maybe they were a friend 20 years ago, but you've maintained an open dialogue inwardly with that person. But maybe they're not the person they were. Maybe 20 years ago, there was, Susie or Bob was really nice. But maybe their life has led them in another direction, but you're still open and still picking up that energy. So it's a good idea sometimes to just take a piece of paper and write down everybody in your life who you felt really close to. There won't be that many people. And then evaluate that, feel that out, and see how that feels. Is that still viable? Do you still want to feel that open to that individual? I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't feel close to people, but just that you have to recognize your sensitivity. It's very important, because if you don't recognize your sensitivity, it gets trashed. You have to recognize that you are sensitive, that you are a bit psychic. Everyone is, but just for you, that evolution is coming out now, that development is happening now. And to pretend it's not there, you'll find you'll get sick more physically, because you'll pick up impressions of others. Okay? You'll just have a lot more confusion, things like that. This happens to a lot of really nice people who are just too sensitive and too open, and they didn't learn that they have to just lead a slightly more secluded life. As I suggested before, I was kidding around about it, but it is very serious. People with psychic gifts and just these natural abilities have been persecuted in this world for a long time. And it's good to be not too loud about your sensitivity unless that's your calling. Some people, they do that. Some people, that is right for them. They just go into the public view and say, yes, I am this, and that's how it is. And that hopefully gives strength to other people who are the same way. But that's not for everyone to do. You have to gauge what's right for yourself. But it's a good idea to practice inaccessibility, in my opinion. Because otherwise you open yourself up to ridicule, which isn't necessary and won't help that individual or won't help you. It's funny, psychic people are so trusting, so many of them. And I think it's a good thing to be trusting. I'd rather be trusting than not. But I think one can be trusting and a little realistic at the same time. They tend to look at just the good side of people. And that's a wonderful thing to do, and you shouldn't stop doing that. But you should also take a detailed inventory of the other side of the individual, just so you'll know. That's more honest, actually. And then you can actually be a better friend to someone. And also, the other thing to do is to constantly work on the physical. Again, the tendency is to spend too much time in the second attention, to resist wanting to deal with the work world, with the reality of life in the physical. But the physical is God too. And if you put some time and energy into that, it grounds you, and you'll find that you can traverse higher and higher spheres of attention without getting spaced out, without not fitting into the world. You can do both. You should be able to very articulately if in fact you are psychic. And I would suggest that all of you have that propensity, because otherwise power wouldn't have brought you here tonight. Just some thoughts on the way. I'd like to thank you for coming this evening. We've all joined our energies and created something good. How good? You'll find out when you get home. But I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised. You may find yourself in kind of a nice state of attention tomorrow. You may just meditate a little bit and see that there was a lot of light here from a lot of different people, and that it was networked. This is how networking is done. It happens a lot. A lot of networking happens in sleep. The dream planes, of course, we didn't even begin to discuss. One can go on and on and on with this material. But in dreaming, a lot of people network with higher beings or move into other currents, astral currents, different worlds. Some dreaming is just, of course, the subconscious just playing with images, but sometimes it's journeys into higher reality, particularly in the very early morning hours. Not always, but that's just the psychic time. 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, when the world is asleep, just the frequencies are more clear. It's easier for certain signals to be received, you might say. But then a lot of people then will have dreams later in the morning, of course, that are more earthbound, and you tend not to remember, the earlier, more psychic ones. But certainly any endeavor you make to expand your awareness will just give you a much better life. Certainly it's painful to be aware, of course. Hell yes, it's painful to be aware. But it's also tremendously beautiful, and the two have a funny way sometimes, but not always, of going together. But there's much, much more beauty than pain. But somehow it enlarges us as beings to experience a little bit of pain, so we understand the pain of others. We get outside of our own cocoon and see what's out there. And of course the beauty is so incredible if we just become sensitive to it. So recognize you're in a special position, and if you feel that and use that, not as I see it, but as you see it, I'm just here to encourage it. Each person has their viewpoint, their mythology, their way of seeing things. I don't mean to contradict any of them. I just like to join my energy with yours and say it's nice to be here. Good night.